Good evening. My name is Dave. Thank you for joining our live interactive telephone town hall. We're hosting tonight's event to give Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger the opportunity to hear directly from you and answer your questions about the issues facing Virginia's families, seniors, and economy. As I mentioned, this event is an interactive event. Congresswoman Spanberger will be taking as many questions as she possibly can during this event. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time, and you'll be placed in line to speak with a member of our staff. They will take down your name and where you're calling from. The next time you hear your name, you will be live on the call, and you will be able to ask your question directly. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov/live. Again, that's spanberger.house.gov/live. If you're watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask the Congresswoman a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal so you can submit your question. Additionally, if you would like to receive updates from our office via email, please press *6 on your phone keypad at any time, and an operator will collect your email address. We could receive a lot of questions during the event this evening, so if we are not able to address your question, please call our district office at 804-401-4110 during normal business hours. Again, if you have any questions throughout the event, please press *3 on your keypad or type them below the streaming player. At this point, I'd like to turn the floor over to Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. Congresswoman, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Abigail Spanberger, and tonight I look forward to hearing from you, hearing your questions, your concerns, your suggestions about the issues that face you, your families, your businesses, and our communities. But I first want to start off by giving a couple updates on some of the efforts that we've been working on in Congress, efforts that have now been signed into law, including legislation focused on supporting our nation's veterans, boosting American manufacturing, and lowering the cost of prescription drugs for Virginia's seniors. This month, I was very glad to see that the president signed into law the bipartisan Honoring Our PAC Act. This bipartisan law expands healthcare access and benefits for American veterans exposed to burn pits and other toxic substances, including Agent Orange. I have long heard from Virginia's veterans and veterans advocates about the importance of getting this legislation done across the finish line and to the president's desk. And I am so glad that we are now one step closer to making sure that we keep our promises to those who have served our country and sacrificed so much. I was proud to vote for this bill because I have heard firsthand the stories of Virginians and their loved ones who have been impacted by toxic exposures during their military service. If you are a veteran and wonder how this law may impact you, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs has updated resources and information on their website. And additionally, you can always reach out to our office with any questions. We stand ready to assist you in answering those questions. And our office number is 804-401-4110. On the economic front, the CHIPS and Science Act was also signed into law earlier this month. And as many of you may know, I have long pushed for America to boost our production of semiconductors here at home, particularly because Virginia is ready to become a national and international leader in this sector. This law will help us get ahead of challenges that we have from the Chinese Communist Party. It will help ensure American independence and leadership in this space, and it will bring new and high-paying jobs to Virginia. And it will make sure that we can crack down on some of the supply chain shortages and challenges that we have faced in recent months and be better prepared into the future. Finally, I want to take a moment to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act, which the president signed into law last week. No matter where I am across our district, no matter what the topic of conversation is, the issue of prescription drug prices always comes up, particularly from seniors. And I am proud to know that this legislation is now law because it will lower the cost that Virginians who utilize Medicare will pay. It will do so by giving Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices. It will cap Medicare out-of-pocket prescription drug costs at $2,000 per year for beneficiaries. And these are some common sense reforms that will make sure that Virginia seniors and their loved ones have a little more peace of mind when it comes to their health, their finances, and their future. We can do a lot more to lower costs for the American people. And I believe that there is more that Congress can do to combat inflation. I continue to advocate for our legislation that passed the House to move forward in the Senate. But tonight, I look forward to answering your questions about the topics that are of interest to you. So with that, thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
All right, thank you very much, Congresswoman, and we're going to go to the phones right away here. We're going to start off with Jonathan. Jonathan, you are on live with Congresswoman Spanberger. Welcome to the forum. What is your question this evening?
Hi, my question is, besides the allowing Medicare to negotiate prices and lowering drug costs, how else is this Inflation Reduction Act going to benefit the everyday person?
Absolutely, Jonathan. Thank you for this question. So there's multiple components of this piece of legislation. I touched briefly on some of the prescription drug pricing. So it's allowing Medicare to negotiate the cost of prescription drugs, which has major impacts on lowering the cost of prescription drugs. It will also cap out-of-pocket costs for seniors who utilize Medicare at $2,000 a month. And any senior who relies on insulin, it will cap the out-of-pocket costs for insulin at $35 a month. Beyond those who utilize Medicare, the Inflation Reduction Act also addresses ACA subsidies and continues the tremendous support that exists within the ACA subsidies for small business owners, for families who utilize the exchanges. The legislation also puts the cost savings that exist in this legislation towards paying down the deficit, making a significant, though not all that we need to do, but a dent in paying down our deficit. And it also makes major investments in combating climate change in a couple of places. So notably, one of the elements is our investing in renewable technology. This is an important element of bringing good jobs to the United States, being a leader on the world stage. This legislation will reduce emissions by 40% by the year 2030. And very importantly, given that I represent a district that is a vibrant agricultural district, in addition to being a heavily suburban district, this legislation makes major investments in the conservation programs that bring our farmers and producers to the table, allow for major investments within rural and agricultural communities, that we see those public dollars beget private dollars and bring important investment to rural communities. And when we're talking about the subsidies related to ACA and marketplace plans, on average, it's estimated that Virginians are going to save about $852 a year. And that's important savings for anyone who gets their family's health coverage on the exchanges.
All right, thank you very much, Congresswoman. Next up on the line, we have Christine. Christine, welcome to the forum this evening. You are on live with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. What is on your mind this evening?
Hi, Congressman Spanberger. Thank you for taking my question. I'm wondering about the Route 1 bridge that crosses over the Rappahannock. It's extremely old, of course, and feels kind of rickety when I cross it. But I'm wondering if there's going to be any connection from the Celebrate community to Spotsylvania. I know that was something that was thought about a number of years ago, but never came to fruition. So I'm wondering what your plans are, your thoughts are about expanding any bridges across the Rappahannock.
Thank you so much for the. Oh, thank you, Christine. Thank you so much for this question. So I was actually just out yesterday visiting the Falmouth Bridge and meeting with Virginia Department of Transportation bridge engineers to talk about the investments that we have made through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to invest in bridge and road repair. Across Virginia, we have far too many miles of highway and roads that are in poor condition, and we need to invest in those improvements. And with our bridges, certainly throughout Virginia, we rely on so many bridges to cross all of our beautiful rivers, and those bridge repairs need to be made. So what we were looking at in the case of the Falmouth Bridge are repairs that are going to be made because of the federal investments flowing to Virginia as a part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Bridge repairs that are able to be made earlier before we are in an emergent circumstance, recognizing the vital nature of all of our bridges, but particularly the bridges that run along the Route 1 corridor. Notably, among the discussions that I had with the Virginia Department of Transportation bridge engineers who met with us and walked through their variety of plans were the fact that they are now, because of these federal investments, able to do earlier preventative maintenance at a point in time where that preventative maintenance can avoid down the line the potential need for real significant repairs if and when we find those bridges in a poor condition. As it relates specifically to the Celebrate community, I would have to follow up with you on that one. I'm not sure of particular developments or plans in that immediate area, but I do thank you for the question. And it's very, very exciting to see the repair work, the preventative maintenance that is being done throughout Virginia, but certainly within the 7th District, certainly along the Route 1 corridor, because it's vital to commerce, it's vital to the movement of people, and to recognize that we are now making investments in strengthening our physical infrastructure as a result of this legislation that I was so proud to support is pretty fantastic. Notably, actually, I just yesterday I was in a couple different stops along the way. Spotsylvania County actually has just received a $3 million RAISE grant. That's a special grant program that was created as part of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And we worked very closely with the Spotsylvania Board of Supervisors and the county government to ensure their competitiveness and ultimately get them that grant. And those grant dollars are going to be vital to improvements along the Route 1 corridor and in the larger area where there will be a new Veterans Affairs facility, the VA facility. And so that will certainly benefit the residents of Spotsylvania, but anybody from neighboring communities who might be traveling to Spotsylvania to go to appointments at the VA. So it's exciting to see that we're beginning real significant plans as a result of this, including road infrastructure and bridge infrastructure. So thank you for the question, Christine.
You're taking part in a live interactive town hall forum with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, and we'd love to hear your questions. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time to get in the queue to ask a question. A member of Congresswoman Spanberger's staff will collect your question. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov. Again, that's spanberger.house.gov/live. And if you're watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask Congresswoman Spanberger a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal so you can submit your question. We're going to go back to the phones now. We have Seth from Culpeper County on the line with us. Seth, welcome to tonight's forum. What's on your mind this evening?
Hi, good evening, Representative Spanberger. I know you've been pushing for expanded broadband service in rural areas. I live in the far western, most rural area of your district, and but I still haven't seen anything out here in Culpeper County. Don't seem to have any hope that we're going to get broadband in the next year or two. So I wonder if you could just update us on your efforts in that regard.
Absolutely. And Seth, thank you so much for asking this question. I continue to be very focused on issues of broadband connectivity. For certainly anybody who lives in an area of the 7th where broadband connectivity is not in question, I would just say this is an issue of economic development. It's an issue of connectivity. It's a healthcare issue to be able to have telehealth services. Certainly, it's an education issue. So many small business owners through the portions of our district that don't have connectivity are limited in the way they can function. It matters for real estate value. The list goes on and on, which is why I continue to be focused on this issue. So a number of things that I have been working on, increasing funding to the Reconnect program, increasing funding to broadband connectivity programs under USDA. And I have been very pleased that since I entered Congress in 2019, the 7th District, various different portions of the 7th District have received significant funding for broadband connectivity. There's been tremendous projects, and we've partnered with local governments, with town governments, and with Central Virginia Electric Co-op that's been a partner, an entity called Firefly that's been working with local governments to help apply for state body grants as well as federal funding. What we do know is that through our various different COVID relief programs, we also position significant funding for broadband and internet connectivity. Virginia is among one of the best states across the country for the utilization of those funds. We in Virginia put millions of dollars of federal funding into the VATI grant program. That's VATI, VATI grant program. And the year-over-year change in places where we have had connectivity has been significant. Now, Seth, that probably gives you little solace if you are still in portions of Virginia or portions of the 7th District where that connectivity has not yet been fully realized, which is why even while we've made progress through the Reconnect program, through early COVID-related relief programs that supported state programs within the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we also made significant financial support to continue those processes across our states. Virginia is on a trajectory to have universal broadband access. This was a major priority of the last administration at the state level, and the trajectory that they were on with some disruptions related to COVID was to have universal access at one point by 2026, and I believe they had hastened that to 2025. To my knowledge, the good work that was started under the last administration, the focus of broadband connectivity does continue by folks at the state level who are committed to these issues, and certainly on the federal level. I continue to partner with communities, with localities, with local governments that are applying for federal grants to support them in that process. We still have some communities across the 7th that are not yet connected. And part of the challenge is it depends on what the coverage is like. For those who may not be aware, when we're looking at maps of where broadband connectivity exists, it's done by census tract, which sometimes creates real misunderstandings in terms of what the level of connectivity is. If you live in a place where some of your neighbors who are close to a main road might have access, but back in a neighborhood or back off a lesser traveled road, that internet connectivity doesn't extend. If you're in that same census tract, it is reflected that you have better internet. So we've passed legislation to improve those maps. And in fact, it was a couple of months back that I welcomed Mitch Landrieu and Andy Burke, who are focused on deployment of the infrastructure dollars. Mr. Burke is a former mayor, and he's focused on broadband connectivity. Mitch Landrieu, also a former mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana, who is focused on overall deployment of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So thankfully, some of your neighbors, Seth, from Culpeper spoke directly to those two gentlemen to say, we need to continue to hurry up this pace because while we're making good progress, it's not everywhere yet. And I continue to be focused on it. If you want to raise any other particular issues about the area where you live or bring any hyper-local issues to our office's attention, I welcome you to be in touch with our team, and we can follow up with you directly as well.
All right, thank you for that question, Seth. Next up on the line, we've got Michael from Chesterfield. Michael, you are on line with the Congresswoman. What is your question this evening?
Yes, ma'am, Miss Abigail. Thanks
Hello.
for talking. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, Michael.
Yes, ma'am. I met you at work a while back at the Sandston PNDC.
Oh, yes. Good
Sandston,
to see you. Yes,
yeah, I met
absolutely.
you working on. I work on the machines,
Perfect.
and they're talking about moving the big one in the corner, the ass machine, to the other end of the building because we don't have the personnel or the forklifts to move the mail to the dock. So they're going to move a multi-million-dollar machine, which is 15 years old, to the other end of the building because it's easier to move it to the dock. I think forklifts and personnel are cheaper than moving that thing. To me, it seems like a lot of wasted money. I was wondering if you could get somebody to look into that. Well, I work on that machine. I'm really going to have to work on it if they move it. As big as two houses, lots, you
Mm.
know,
And moving
it's
that full
huge.
machine? Wow.
We got a new plant manager. His name's Reese Stillman.
Hmm.
A really nice guy. He's a Marine, and I'm an Army guy, so we get along. But I think it's coming from higher, from D.C.
Okay.
I wish they were really looking at this before they start taking the old machine apart. It's the
So
taxpayers' money because we all pay taxes.
absolutely. Well, so Michael, let me just start by, for anybody who's on the town hall who Michael gave a couple acronyms. Michael works over at the Sandston PNDC. That is a U.S. Postal Service facility that is responsible for sorting mail across a major chunk and region of Virginia. So it is Michael and his colleagues who do the tremendous work of making sure that we all get our packages and our mail on time. And I met Michael when I was over at the Sandston PNDC because some of you may remember there's been some ebbs and flows with mail delivery issues, particularly as it related to certain machines being shut down. We saw some delays. And I went over to the PNDC to talk with folks there, get a tour of what operations were to make sure that we could get things back on track. So, Michael, thank you to you and all of your colleagues for the work that you do. And I track post office issues pretty aggressively. So I would love to follow up with the folks over there just to dive into the decision to move machinery. And for everybody else listening, some machinery has been taken online and taken offline, but we're always looking to make sure we've got the efficiencies that help the customer. Michael, I appreciate your focus on making sure we're saving taxpayer dollars and utilizing our machinery well. So, Michael, hopefully somebody would have gotten your full contact information, and we'll follow up with you directly to get a little bit more detail so that we can follow up on this issue with you and your colleagues. But thanks for bringing it to my attention, and I'll use this as an opportunity to say anybody who might have any issues with any federal agency, if you've got challenges with your mail delivery or with the VA or Social Security or IRS, our office has a team of folks who are focused on these issues. Michael, in your case, Mackenzie's going to be our point of contact in our office. But please do be in touch with the office if we can help you with anything related to a federal agency, whether you work there or whether or not you're in need of service from them. But thanks, Michael. It's good to talk to you again, and hopefully I'll see you on my next visit out there.
All right. Thank you very much, Congresswoman. We're going to go back to Chesterfield. We've got Kevin on the line with us. Kevin, you're on live with Congresswoman Spanberger. What is your question this evening?
Hi, Abigail. Thank you so much for seeing me. I had my grandmother's brother was in the Korean War, and he died of cancer to the lung.
Okay.
And he just simply wasn't taken care of. Every time I get on here with you guys, I listen, and there's always a veteran talking about things that they don't get.
That's right.
So my question is, you know what just happened in Kansas? How the people voted down what the legislators had made against women, I think it was. And we do something like that for the veterans, where somebody can could you help me, for example, make a petition that I could present to others? Get enough. I guess you have to get enough votes for it to be actually legislation that would go on a ballot. But the reason that I'm asking this is because it seems to be when a guy becomes president, his party loses both the Senate and the House often. So then there's nothing that's ever going to be done for people, simply because this back and forth thing going around. If the people were able to be more involved in doing legislations, for example, if there's something that we don't like, we get enough people to vote against whatever the leaders are doing, then maybe we can get some things done for ourselves.
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you for this question, and I have a couple different responses. One, I'm grateful for your great uncle's service. I'm so sorry about his passing, and this is where I want to highlight the bill that we finally, and I'm going to say this very clearly, far too late. This should have been done long before I got to Congress. Far too late, but finally, we have passed a bill called the Honoring Our PAC Act, which is one of the most comprehensive pieces of veterans-related legislation. It passed the House with some limited bipartisan support. It passed the Senate with more bipartisan support because we recognize and finally put together good legislation that recognizes the unique exposures, toxic exposures that cause, and I don't know the specifics of your loved one's circumstance, but toxic exposures that cause higher rates of neurological disorders, higher rates of certain types of cancers and blood diseases. And we have to ensure that that service connection, disability, or illness is understood, is accepted, because our office has worked with far too many veterans who were sick, who were dying, whose families were suffering, and they were fighting to say, when I served overseas and worked a burn pit and got ill, or I served overseas and I was a military firefighter and I got ill, this is connected. And so we continue to work these cases from a constituent service standpoint. If any veteran on the line or a family member of a veteran has been denied the benefits that you believe you are owed, or someone told you you were owed, please call our office. We will help work your case. And we have had, I won't even call it success because it's what it should be. We have had steps forward in ensuring that veterans are getting what they need. But this legislation that just went into law will change so much of that, because no longer will veterans who were exposed to burn pits or Agent Orange have to fight to demonstrate that, of course, the reason they have a unique type of cancer or blood disorder or neurological challenge is because of the toxic exposures that they had. So I'm very proud of this legislation. It will change lives. Sadly, far too many veterans have suffered and faced challenges that they should not have faced, but we are rectifying that for so many moving forward, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to have voted for this legislation. And anybody who has specific questions about it, please call our office. We will explain. We will say if it's applicable to you and help you with that. Now, related to state referendums and law changes, I would say a couple things. One, as it relates to veterans-related issues, those are always going to be federal, so it has to be done at the federal level, which means members of Congress and senators have to do something, which is what we've done. Again, admittedly, far too late, should have been done long before I ever got to Congress, but this is a good example of where we are coming together and doing the right thing and passing legislation that has major impact, but recognizes what we owe our veterans. At the state level, state to state, there's variations in what referendums are permissible. But the good thing is about Virginia, we literally have elections every single year. We are reelecting either our federal folks or our state folks. And so I thank you for wanting to be engaged. I thank you for wanting to drive the conversation. And whether that be through constituent initiatives or demanding more of your legislators at the, frankly, at the local, state, or federal level, that we work for you. We should be accountable for you to you. And that, to loop it back to the story of your loved one, is why I'm so proud of the work that we have done legislatively to support veterans with toxic exposure, but also to support veterans in the 7th District through our direct constituent services that we provide. And notably, for anyone who's listening, this is a town hall where we're discussing a whole array of issues, but regularly we have town halls where we are focused specifically on veteran-related issues, and we're usually joined by someone from the Virginia Department of Veteran Services, and those gentlemen provide tremendous answers to some of the state or local resources that exist, while I provide the answers related to federal questions. So thank you for this question. Thank you for your advocacy, and thank you for being focused on continuing to make progress and do right by our veterans or all citizens.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And as a reminder, this forum with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is interactive, and we'd love to hear your questions. If you do have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time to get in the queue to ask that question. A member of Congresswoman Spanberger's staff will collect that question. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov/live. Again, that's spanberger.house.gov/live. And if you're watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask the Congresswoman a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal so you can submit your question. We're going to go back to the phones now. We've got Carolyn on the line with us. Carolyn, welcome to tonight's forum. You're on live with Congresswoman Spanberger. What is your question?
Good evening. I had a question regarding self-employed truckers. They're incurring so much cost because diesel gasoline or diesel fuel is continuing to increase in cost. Is there any assistance? Is there any programs, any grants that could help self-employed truckers stay in business?
So Carolyn, thank you for this question. I have been working on and introduced bipartisan legislation with a Republican colleague of mine from Wisconsin, to get at one aspect of the challenges facing the trucking industry and truckers as individuals, which is that we have a shortage of truckers nationwide that in part has contributed to some of the challenges we've seen in supply chains. And we also have a retiring and an aging trucking workforce. I think that every American who has gone to the grocery store or gone to a store and not seen the items that they were looking to buy has what is a new level of tremendous respect for the men and women who move goods and items across our country. And I think everyone now better understands that things getting from point A to point B happens because hardworking Americans are moving those goods. And as you mentioned, truckers are facing, especially self-employed truckers, are facing significant challenges as the cost of fuel has been so high. It cuts directly into the profits and the income that they're bringing home. So I introduced bipartisan legislation, I mentioned, with a colleague from Wisconsin, focused on helping keep truckers in the workforce and also helping recruit truckers into the workforce. This legislation would, and we're pushing to move it forward, because I think it's a simple, straightforward effort to support our trucking community. Truck drivers who are new to the trucking industry, as they are going through training, they will have a refundable tax credit to support their initial entry into the workforce, use it on whatever it is that they would want, that refundable tax credit. And then for truckers who are already on the roads and driving, as long as they drive 1,900 hours in a year, they would be eligible also for a refundable tax credit, recognizing the value of their work, incentivizing them to stay on the job because their work is so necessary, and also helping to offset some of the recent challenges and cost increases. In terms of any other legislative efforts, well, I'll first mention our legislation supported by the Virginia Trucking Association, the National Trucking Association, and we developed it directly in concert with truckers on the road in the organizations that work to support them in the industry. Beyond that, though, I will look to see if there are any other legislative efforts. I do a lot of work in this space, so in terms of specific and fuel related, I'm not aware of any on current efforts to support particularly independent truckers in that way. But I will dig into it, and ultimately we can follow up with you, Carolyn, as well, just to confirm if we've found anything else, in which case I look forward to joining those efforts. But I do hope that the example of the legislation that I'm leading, that we're pushing for, is an example of the tremendous respect and value that we place on the work of truckers across Virginia and across the country. So thank you for the question.
All right, thank you very much, Carolyn. And Congresswoman, we're getting a lot of phone calls from Chesterfield tonight. We've got Brenda on the line with us next from Chesterfield. Brenda, you're on live with Congresswoman Spanberger. What is on your mind this evening?
Good evening. Thank you for taking my call. My concern tonight is senior cybersecurity. Seniors are vulnerable and we're targets. And we may not be able to tell when we're being scammed as often as some people. Businesses are forcing seniors to pay bills online and do things online we're not comfortable doing. For instance, my garbage company charges me $1.95 a month to mail me a bill so that I can have the privilege of sending them money and paying, using a stamp to send it to them, which I'd rather do. I will not pay bills online. I do not bank online. I do not do anything financial online. It's just not secure. But they're penalizing those of us who choose to mail a bill in, mail a payment in. And I don't think this should be legal. I don't think that we should have to be penalized or treated differently just because we want to stay safe and not pay bills online. But, you know, they claim they want to save paper, but every time I get a bill, there's more paper than ever in it because they're putting inserts in there requesting that people start paying online. And every month I get these inserts. So they're wasting paper sending it to me because I'm not going to do it. But the real reason they're trying to force people to pay online is so they don't have to pay employees. They don't have to hire people to open envelopes and take checks to the bank or whatever they have to do. They don't have to pay benefits and they can operate with fewer employees. But it puts the burden and the onus on us, the bill payers, to take the risk. And I just don't think that it's fair for businesses to be allowed to penalize us by charging us more than other people.
So Brenda, you raised a number of different issues, all related to one issue, and I want to thank you for that. For starters, just talking broadly about cybersecurity and the threats that exist, and particularly that we know very well that scammers and those who want to take financial advantage of others do frequently target seniors. And I want to thank local law enforcement and FBI for ongoing good work in cracking down on these schemes and investigating these schemes. And there are a lot of good, ironically, online resources and details about steps that people can take to protect themselves, where you can report it if you are a victim of an online crime or you think that someone has done a phishing attack or hacked your email or your computer to some degree. And so in our next newsletter, we'll be sure to pull together some resources and send those out. But then there's also the other issue of, Brenda, it should be your choice. Whether you're worried about potentially being hacked or being vulnerable online from a cyber scammer who might target you, or whether you live in Western Culpeper, like Seth, who called in earlier, and don't have online access at home, the option for you to be able to pay your bills via a check in the mail should be one that continues to be present for you. I'm going to dig into this issue a little bit more. Certainly at the federal level, I'm not currently aware of legislation related to the right of consumers to pay via traditional means, or if there's anything else at the state level in Virginia. But I'll dig into this a little bit more and follow up with you, Brenda, because frankly, you don't have to be a senior to want to write that check and send it off in the mail. You can be somebody who doesn't have online access at home or simply just prefers doing it the way they're accustomed to. So thank you for bringing up this issue. It certainly is probably one that impacts many people, and certainly the idea that you're paying more for the pleasure of putting a stamp on an envelope is certainly one that I can understand your concern there. So we'll make sure that we have your contact information and follow up specifically related to the payment issue, but we'll dig into it a little bit more. So thank you so much for this question.
Next up, we're going to take an online question, and this comes from Charles Dillard, Congresswoman. This is a two-part question, and he says, we're dragging our feet on Ukraine aid. What are we doing to, one, speed up arms to Ukraine, and two, keep the heat on Russia?
Thank you for this question, an important one to ask, particularly as Ukrainians are celebrating their independence as they continue to fight for it. So I have been a strong supporter of American support to Ukraine from the very beginning and aggressive American action in the face of an invading Russia. The United States, I think, has done much good work in rallying our partners in putting sanctions on Russia and Russians and impeding their ability to operate on the world stage. We need to continue doing that. And certainly as they keep finding ways to get around our sanctions, we need to continue deploying them to thwart their efforts and make sure that Russia and the Russian people, and certainly those who are benefiting from this aggression or driving this aggression, feel the real impact of it. In terms of our support to Ukraine, from the very beginning, we have supported with lethal aid, and all along the way, we have had strengthened support to Ukraine. We are in the process of sending the greatest amount of support. We have initially, it was javelins, and then it was Switchblade drones, and then it's been HIMARS. We continue to provide the Ukrainians with the weaponry and the tactical gear that they need. We're also supporting them on the ground with communication support, with information support, and additional support related to medical and communications. We can always, frankly, we always should be doing it faster than we are, just because of the nature of what this invasion has been. But I am, as an American, very proud. Even though I always want it to be faster and everything delivered yesterday, we continue to be highly, highly responsive. We have seen an overall commitment. It has been a bipartisan commitment. Unfortunately, there are some who want to abandon our Ukrainian allies, but their voices are not nearly as great as those of us who remain unified, recognizing that the Ukrainian fight for freedom is a Ukrainian fight for democracy. It's a Ukrainian fight to ensure their own sovereignty, but it is also a fight for the Western world to push back against Russia and to make sure that there is no movement across any boundaries beyond Ukraine. Certainly, the United States' work and our quick approval of Sweden and Finland joining NATO is incredibly important from a strategic standpoint, and I'm proud of the work of American diplomats in helping to ensure that that process is moving forward. But the process is ongoing, and I will continue to be committed and engaged on this issue as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, certainly as a former national security professional myself. I also maintain contacts and continued engagement with members of the Ukrainian Parliament as a member of the American Congress. making sure that we're in regular communication to understand what the people that they represent and what their country is facing. So we continue to provide more. We continue to be supportive. And when Russia first invaded, most of the world could not have believed that the Ukrainians would have been able to do what they have done. And they've done it through their bravery, their commitment, but in large part due to the significant help of U.S. Weapons systems, communications, and information. And as an American, I'm proud of that.
Thank you for the question, Charles. And you're taking part in a live interactive town hall forum with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. We want to hear your questions. So if you do have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time. That will put you in the queue to ask that question. A member of the Congresswoman's staff will collect your question. And if you also would like to ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player, you're certainly welcome to do that. You just have to go to spanberger.house.gov/live to submit the question. And if you're watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask Congresswoman Spanberger a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal so you can submit your question. Next up, we're going to go to Angela in Locust Grove. Angela, welcome to tonight's phone call. You're on live with the Congresswoman. What is your question?
Thank you, Congresswoman. Question for you. A few years ago when my mother retired. Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello?
Yes, you're still there.
Sorry.
I can hear you.
In 2012. Okay, great. In 2012, when my mom retired and signed up for her health insurance through Medicare, she did not sign up for the RX program because she didn't take any medicine at the time. However, we did not know that that was a requirement. And so the following year when she signed up, she was assessed a fee of like $40 or $45 for not selecting the plan at the time. And that fee is assessed every month for the past, since 2013, and it doesn't seem to be going away. It's actually deducted out of Social Security check every month. So my question is there anything that we can do to get rid of this fee? Because she is now signed up for the RX plan.
So just for anybody who's listening who may not be familiar with the scope of this challenge, and sadly I'm familiar with the issue because I have had other constituents face it. So with Medicare Part D, there is a enrollment penalty that equals 1% of your premium per month that you delay enrollment. So if you delay enrolling in Medicare Part D for 24 months, just 2 years later than when you're eligible, you will see a premium increase of 24% every single month for the rest of your life. Theoretically, the purpose of this penalty is to ensure that people are signing up as soon as they're eligible. The idea being that when you sign up as soon as you're eligible, you can get preventative care. You're younger, perhaps healthier than if you wait until you are sick. But these penalties are confusing, and certainly as you outlined, if your mother was healthy when she first retired or when she was first eligible, didn't think it was necessary, the fact that she would then be impacted for the rest of her life is absolutely inappropriate. In my opinion, it continues to be a penalty that doesn't make sense. And certainly looking into potentially capping the penalty or changing the structure of it if there is one, if one must continue, is certainly, I think, something that is important. And we really need to make shifts in how we streamline Medicare enrollment so that anyone who is eligible can flow into the system and not get caught up in this. I do have colleagues who are working on a piece of legislation, it's bipartisan piece of legislation focused on penalty issues, but actually that's specific to Medicare Part B. I will follow up to dig into the Medicare Part D, assuming Part D is your mother's challenge, to determine how we can fix that system. But there's legislation. Two colleagues, a Republican from California and a Republican from Washington State and a Democrat from California, are working on that legislation. But the problem that you outline is that someone delaying, I mean, even just a month or two can ultimately create impact on someone's finances for the rest of their life. But we'll also follow up with you just separately to if there's any other unique elements to your mother's circumstance that we might be able to dig into. So we'll do that on the constituent service side after the call too. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Angela. Next up, we've got Vic from Chesterfield County. Vic, welcome to tonight's forum. You're on live with Congresswoman Spanberger. What is your question? Well, it looks like we might have lost Vic. I think he might have dropped off the line. So next up, we're going to go with Zell in Western Enrico. And I believe I'm pronouncing your name right. I hope I am. Zell, you're on live with the Congresswoman. What is your question? Zell, are you there? Okay, well, we're going to take Sally Walker next. Sally is calling in live from Chesterfield as well. Sally, you are on live with the Congresswoman. What is your question?
Hi, Congresswoman. Thank you for taking my call. I am calling to get any resources or grants for minority business owners, if you have any information on that.
Sally, we do, in fact. Thanks for asking this question. Are you a business owner yourself, or are you supporting other business owners?
No, I'm actually a business owner myself.
Excellent. So on our website, spanberger.house.gov, we have a grants guide. So on our website, we have information related to federal grants. And there are so many federal grants across the spectrum of what might be possible, but in our grants guide, we kind of percolate to the top some of the primary ones that we have found many of our constituents are interested in. We also have an individual in our office who is focused on answering questions about federal grants. So if you give our website a look on the grants guide, that's spanberger.house.gov. Hopefully that's a good jumping point to looking at what exists in the federal grant space. There's a lot more beyond just small business entities, but we've got it there. Anybody else on the line who might be interested, local government folks, we've got it all up there, law enforcement, farmers, producers. We've got a variety of samplings of what exists. But please take a look at that. And then from there, just give our office a call, 804-401-4110. And any follow-up questions you have, we can answer them about federal grants and dig into any ones that you might have specific questions about.
Okay, we're going to go to another online question now, Congresswoman, and this one comes from David Brickley, and he asks, thanks for joining in the Oval Office and your sponsorship of H.R. 2278, providing for federal designation on the September 11th National Memorial Trail, which honors our heroes of 9/11. But that's not really a question, that's more of a thank you.
Well, thank you. It's not every day that I get a comment for someone I joined in the Oval Office, but for anybody who's listening, I had been an advocate of a piece of legislation that makes a memorial trail between New York, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. And that's been an ongoing effort by many advocates, many family members who lost a loved one on that terrible day, and many community members and legislators who wanted to see a vibrant commemoration of bringing those sites together in a way that also brings people together. So finally, we got that legislation through the House, through the Senate, and to the president's desk. And I was very proud to be in the Oval Office for that signing, for a very special piece of legislation that certainly matters to so many Americans, but certainly to many Virginians. So, David, thank you for the comment, and certainly thank you for all of your advocacy in ensuring that legislation and that honor continue to move forward.
All right, we're going to go back to the phones now. We have Bashan from Chesterfield on the line with us. Bashan, thank you for joining the phone call this evening. And what is your question?
Hi, my question concerns the Medicare gap. As a nurse, I see plenty of patients, adult, elderly, and families that have trouble paying copays, the assistance that they need, they don't have. For one, they can't afford, and the copays run anywhere from hundreds to thousands, up into the 3,500. Congressman or Congresswoman, sorry.
That's okay.
I was just wondering, I know you've been working on a lot of Medicare, Medicaid things in the government, and I was just wondering, with the Medicare gap, what's been going on with any type of copay assistance push-throughs that have been working in the for advantages for people in these areas?
Well, I want to begin by thanking you for your advocacy on behalf of your patients. And certainly it is this Medicare gap that we work to remedy, to address as it relates to the Inflation Reduction Act. And so the Inflation Reduction Act, a piece of legislation that was passed the House, the Senate, and the President just signed it into law last week, will do a couple things when it comes to affordability. One, for any of your patients who may be diabetic and require insulin, it caps insulin at $35 for those on Medicare beginning in calendar year 2023. So that's beginning in January. And that will be a significant support to those who do incur insulin-related expenses. To close the overall Medicare gap and ensure that patients can actually afford and budget for their copays, the Inflation Reduction Act will also make sure that the out-of-pocket expense is capped at $2,000 a year. Now, we will see that we will phase in that cap, and so that will be in full effect in 2025. Beginning January 2025, where any patient on Medicare, they will know that no matter the circumstances, that out-of-pocket is capped at $2,000. And so this is an effort to be fully responsive to the exact problem that you are raising. And I'm really grateful that you're raising it on behalf of your patients, because it is certainly an issue that matters to people across the district. Also, one last thing, the Inflation Reduction Act also expands the low-income subsidy for Part D drug copays and premiums. So that's the subsidy up to 150 for anyone who's at 150% of the federal poverty level. And that is also something that will go into effect permanently January 2025. And that includes Part D premiums, deductibles, and copayments. And so that is incredibly important, particularly for those who are on very constrained fixed income. So some of that help is immediate in the new year once the new year arrives, and then some of it will be phasing in fully there in January of 2025. But any additional information that we can provide, we continue to push out information related to these changes in our newsletter, which you can sign up for at spanberger.house.gov. But any other specific questions, you or any of your patients or any other community members are welcome to call our office with additional questions.
All right, thank you very much. That's going to bring us to the end of our question and answer period for tonight's town hall. But before we bid you all a good evening, I'm going to turn the floor back over to Congresswoman Spanberger for some final comments. Congresswoman, the floor is yours.
I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We've had an array of issues to touch upon. Looking back at my notes, everything from broadband connectivity to physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, the movement of mail, paying bills through mail, cybersecurity, our support for Ukraine and the Ukrainians fighting for their democracy. And certainly healthcare, and prescription drug prices. I thank you for the opportunity to answer your questions. I do want to note I had in response to Carolyn's question related to also cybersecurity and the fact that so many folks with nefarious intent do target seniors. I'm actually very proud of the fact, and I can't believe I neglected to mention this earlier, of the fact that I passed a bill called the Better Cybercrimes Metrics Act, which is a piece of legislation, bipartisan, that I'm very proud of, that will support or is supporting law enforcement, federal and local, in their ability to understand the types of crimes perpetrated against our fellow Americans online, be it phishing, be it hacking, be it identity theft, and allow support to those investigations. So it's a piece of legislation I'm very proud of, and it is vitally important to those who are working to protect all citizens from these sorts of attacks, but particularly knowing that oftentimes senior citizens are the ones being targeted. It's also a piece of legislation I'm proud of that we moved. But I want to thank everybody. Again, so many of the questions had a variety of legislative and constituent-oriented answers. So please, anyone who has a challenge with a federal agency, anyone I can be of support to, if you're working with Medicare or IRS or the VA, please be in touch. And if not, in the interim, I hope you are doing well, staying safe. For anyone with kids back in school, I hope the past couple weeks have been good, and the coming weeks continue to go well for our new students as they head back to start this school year. But again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us, and it is my honor to serve you in Congress. I look forward to the next time. And again, have a good evening, and thanks for joining.
Thank you all for taking the time to join us for this important Virginia-based telephone town hall with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. We appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions. But if we were not able to get to your question this evening, you can call our district office at 804-401-4110 during normal business hours, or go to spanberger.house.gov. Thank you again. Stay safe and have a great evening.